Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this. Welcome to Uncovered. Thank you so much, Cathryn, for jumping on with us. I'm with an amazing person who is an amazing leader. And we're going to be talking about leadership and the downfalls and the pitfalls of leadership today with this amazing person. The reason why I've got you on here is we've got an amazing story to tell. And thanks for jumping on, Cathryn, and hanging out with me today.
Thanks, Jace. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. There's so much to share.
Yeah, there is. And actually, this is the big thing. It's such a pleasure to be here. So I'd love you to tell the listeners the reason why you joined the Academy and what happened in your world and where you are now, because you've got an incredible story to tell.
Yeah, so I guess I've been a professional person and in leadership roles probably since, I don't even remember now, but in the corporate world since 1999, and worked very hard on the various aspects of consulting, leadership, management, mentoring, coaching, and worked my way up. Quite a bit of effort to work my way up to where I got. So I ended up being sort of head of industry for organisational change and data analytics and that kind of thing, particularly in the government sector. And I got sick about 10 years ago and had a bit of a scrape with ovarian cancer. And at that time, I decided not to work, not to rest or look after myself, and just pushed my way through it. So I ended up having surgery and having half of my womanly bits removed. And so then for the next 10 years, I battled with my health, and I battled with having the energy to work and also pushing myself to become further and further up the tree. And then in November, not last year, the year before, my body finally gave me a slap in the face, as we say. And I ended up fainting at work again and was sent home and went to a GP who then thought, I better scan you again for ovarian cancer, which I was thinking was a total overreaction because I thought I was free of that. I'd already had my experience with that 10 years ago, and I'd had scans every 6 months for 5 years. It had all been clear. So in my mind, I had moved on from that. So when it came back into my life, to say I was devastated is an absolute understatement, because I was at the top of my game. I was leading big data and analytics projects in the health sector. So I had masses of teams under me and was really, in my place where I thought this is a good place for me to be career-wise. And so to be slapped on the face like that with a massive illness, I was faced then with a decision about what to do. And because I had worked through it last time, I thought that's not a good strategy. It took a long time. I felt unwell for a decade. And so on that moment, in that spot, I said, no, I'm going to quit my job, which was an incredibly difficult decision when I had such a big professional identity at the time. So I remember just absolutely sobbing with every fibre in my being and every bone in my body. And on the end of the phone was my organisational change manager. And I said, I'm really sick. I have to stop. So from that moment on, I then had to, I decided to treat it like a project. I thought, right, I know how to do projects. I know how to implement stuff. So from that moment on, I thought, right, I need a team. I need a team of people around me who will support me and help me to get this sorted. And that's how I found you. And that's how I found the Academy, because I literally wrote down on a piece of paper all of the roles I needed in my life. And I knew one of my project managers knew you. And so she recommended that I join the Academy. I also was going to yoga here locally, and one of the other Academy members who also helped me happened to land on my yoga mat. So between the two of you and many other people in the Academy who have taught me so much, I began to learn how to address the disease that I had grown. I'd grown another 10 centimetre tumour and was extremely unwell. I couldn't even stand up. So yeah, it took a number of months, and that's how I came to be in the Academy, and that's how I've learned how to rebuild my health and rebuild my wellness and work at that every day.
That is amazing. And tell me what happened with the cancer. Tell the listeners what happened after working with us. And there's an amazing healer as well, Chris Radnich, who helped you along the pathway as well. What happened through the journey of spending time with us? What was I as part of your team, by the way? What did you put me as?
I think I had you as healer. You were
Okay.
healer as
I was the healer. Okay.
title, because back then I didn't have any other words to describe you, and I still don't know what the word would be to describe you. It's just everything. I had the sister. I had all sorts of roles needed, and so yeah. So so when I met you all, I went to work on what was making me sick and what I was feeling and what traumas were in my body. And I realized then that the disease inside of me was actually resulting from stored emotions, stored trauma, stored beliefs that I had had most of my life. I had an extremely traumatic childhood and a fairly abusive father, and then a series of pretty ordinary relationships with men after that. So I had to address all of that, and I literally focused on that and myself and what that looked like, what I was feeling, where the sadness, where the grief, where the devastation, where all of those emotions were sitting. And I sat with them, and I cried and I cried and I cried. And I live by a lake, and I swear I could have filled this lake 3 times over. There was just so many tears. And over the course of about 2 months, we managed to, we as a team, I say you and Chris as a team, and others who were in my team to help me emotionally as well. Another good friend, Annette, incredible support. And I wasn't used to getting support. So I was the one that supported other people. I wasn't the one that was supported. So that was hard. But so over that 2 months, we actually shrunk the 10 centimetre tumour. And when I went into surgery and they went in, there was no evidence of the 10 centimetre tumour at all, and just a dodgy fallopian tube, which was pretty amazing, because before there was all of this stuff in there. I didn't reach a cancer diagnosis this time. So yeah, I had the doctor confirm to me in a medical report, because I couldn't believe it. I could believe that I made a fundamental decision to get better, and I think that was part of the journey. Like, there is no way that if I hadn't have believed and actually was determined to get well and made that decision to live, that this could have happened. So that was probably the first thing. But over that course of the 2 months, we had shrunk a 10 centimetre tumour. There was no evidence of any cancer in any of the organs that they tested afterwards. I have no scanning now for the next 5 years like I did before, and I'm completely free and clear. I still proceeded with the surgery, and that recovery in itself has, I'm coming up 12 months now, and I'm still learning how to operate this new body of mine without half of its parts. But yeah, I think people don't, like, the doctor didn't believe it. He didn't want to talk to me about it. He just couldn't wait for me to get out of his office and, move on. Like, he was like, he just didn't want to talk about it. So it was quite interesting.
Isn't it incredible? And I've had this because I used to be, and still am, obviously, the miracle man. And I've been, people used to fly overseas to come and see me and say, you need to see that guy. And I wasn't able to help everybody, listeners. I could only help people who I could help, and some people who had cancer have died, and they've been going through the model, they've been doing everything. I never tell people to just use me. I love having the model test what I do all the time, and I think this is really, really essential, listeners, is that to not think that you just focus on that healer and not get tested up by science. Because every time I used to have cancer people and they had cancer markers, I would tell them, if you've got 1,000 cancer markers with PSI, whatever the numbers are, I'll halve it. I'll put it to 500. Yeah. And then I tell them, I'm going to put it to 250. And then I tell them, I put it to 125, and I get it down to single digits. And you had a moment, and I want you guys to listen to this really, really clearly. There was a moment where you had a meltdown, didn't you?
Yeah.
And everything, I know this with healing, that meltdown moment could have been life or death. And it was where the gritty part was. And it's usually from a cancer cell marker position. It's when the cancer cell markers that I've gotten down are from 0 to 10, is when the decision to live actually occurs. And there was a real lack of safety, and there was a major catastrophe that if you and I didn't have that conversation, we would not be talking right now.
Yeah, I think there's definitely, the breakdown was so important.
Yes.
In pushing me to go there into that decision and to take, well, it was initially to give you the power to help me and hand that over.
That's right. And I think this.
And I'd never done that because I was always, they jokingly called me the commander in my day job. Like, I didn't assign that title to myself. It's just what people would call me, the commander. So I was always the one that was, heading up the ship and standing there holding the steering wheel. So in that moment of total breakdown, where I realized that I needed to reach out and trust you, and by the way, trusting a man for me was huge, because I'd been literally, thrown against walls and all sorts of things, punched in the face. For me to trust a man was a pretty big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think that's when we have those moments. And I know from a leadership perspective, if we're taking it to that, this is the systemic problem in leadership, in entrepreneurship, in corporate, everywhere, where leaders have put themselves in a superhero position that they are not allowed to be anything other than the commander. And then we end up becoming a slave to a system that has been terribly taught.
Absolutely. And I was a complete slave, and I didn't realize how much I was a slave to the organization and how much I had undervalued my own health and well-being. So I didn't even have health as a value for myself. I remember days that I had 30 projects underneath me. I was organising and navigating relationships across government departments and things that have never been done before. I had people stabbing me in the back, firing me at all levels, and my diary would be triple booked all day long. And I would literally just choose my own adventure through that diary and not even take the time to go to the toilet or to, take a drink or to put food in my body. So, I wasn't, there goes the water. So I wasn't even sleeping well. I wasn't even managing my nervous system well. I wasn't putting enough water into my body. Now, I had meditated for 12 years before this happened. So it wasn't that I wasn't familiar with meditation. It's that I wasn't listening to my body and what my body was telling me, whether it's an emotion, a pain, a thought, a limitation I was experiencing. I just pushed through it and got the goal done and got the outcome for the organization with a complete disregard for how I was and what I needed and who I was needing in my life to support me. Completely oblivious to it.
Yeah, and I think this is really important, listeners, to understand this, is that when you're in a position of leadership, you abort your health. And it's so common.
Totally.
And unfortunately, and we were chatting about this probably about 5 or 6 months ago, Cathryn, because I said, do you know any people that are like you that would be a really good fit for the academy? And you said, you know what? They don't actually know that they need help because they're in their commander position. So they have to get into a place, and this is awful, that people think they have to be in a disastrous place to actually get help because they don't realize they need help. We all need it. I need help. Absolutely. I get help all the time, right? And I lead the academy, and people put me in, and you would have put me in this, Cathryn. You would have put me in the deity archetype, which a lot of people put me in. I'm the God or the Jesus archetype that actually will heal me. And I know that people put me in that position. And so if I put myself in that position, I'm damned. Right? Yeah. I'm happy for people to project that position onto me. If I do it, though, I'm screwed, because that means that I can't be helped. And this is the problem with leadership that happens today, is that we put ourselves in the commander, the superhero position, and we lose our connection to actually getting the support that we need. And we all need it. And it's so important. Like, the systems that we use in the academy are so, I remember thinking about you, I was just like, I wonder if she's going to look at this and think, God, this is so way too simple. It's not complex enough for this absolute brilliant mind to handle, right? I remember when you joined, it was like, this is just not right. This content and all of this stuff, because it was so loose and so destructured, because I am here to destructure the learning brain, right? To get our intuition and our instincts back, which has gone through linear-based learning in universities. So when you came on, I was like, Jesus, I wonder how she's going to cope with the simplicity of this, because this is like Taoism at its best. It's like Pooh Bear idea. How can you be simple and just want to eat honey, which is eating your sustenance for life and having good community around you and enjoying being happy?
Yeah, so I think my intuition has definitely ramped up 100,000% since I've been here. But what I used to use my intuition for was on other people and where the organization and where the teams were. And I was so perceptive with, I had 300 people working on something with me, and I knew where the issues were before they even spoke to me. So my intuition in that regard was being used from my perspective. I was using it on other people. I wasn't directing it back to me, which is where the main game happens. Everything comes from you, not around you. So I was fortunate with the techniques, because they are so simple, that I really got back to, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What's stopping me right now? Where is that happening? So even just having that mental assessment and checking in with how I was feeling, and then learning what the emotions were, because when you're a leader, you don't even talk about them.
No,
and even this week, I've gone into a workshop setting, and I've called people out about how they were treating me and how I was feeling. And the response to that is, well, that's your job. You need to put up with this. This is what you do all the time, isn't it? Why are you telling us that you're feeling anxious or scared? And the immediate sort of reaction is that I must be incompetent because I can't handle them projecting and screaming at me all the time. Now, I don't think I have to tolerate that. You know, I can understand and accept that people are in pain or they're not understanding how they're feeling, and I can hold space for that. Sure. But I don't have to put up with being treated like crap either.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that the thing with this, I remember when I was a contractor in the IT world, they just expected me to do the job.
Yeah.
And I did, right? And the thing that I was really good at, I was so emotionally intelligent around what I needed to do. And I was different because I changed and influenced under the noses of everybody. So no one knew that I was influencing because I was leading from behind and actually offering it to the managers and saying, what about this? And they go, oh, good. Yeah, we'll do that. And so when you're in a position of yours, which is creating change based on an institution, right? Yeah. So what happens with corporations, they institutionalize their frameworks, and then they become, this is what we always do. And then someone comes in and says, it's fundamentally flawed. We need to change it. I've come in to do that. I've been hired for this job, and everyone tries to shoot the messenger. And that's a big challenge.
Totally. So I said to them the other day, you know, stop putting your bullets in my back and point your guns to the war that we're fighting, which is what we need to achieve for this organisation. If you need support and you need something, let me know. And I continually say, if you need support, if you want some help, let me know. And they're only just yesterday afternoon. Now, I've been there 4 months and I've been offering that every week for 4 months. And I've set up groups where I say it, and I've set up messages and emails and all sorts of things. And it was only yesterday that someone said, I'm really struggling with how impatient I'm feeling and angry when people say things that I think are wrong. And I said, totally normal. I used to feel that way too. And then they were like, oh, you know. And I'm like, that's good. And they can't believe that I think that's good that they're getting angry and frustrated. And I know from my own journey that when you're angry and you're frustrated, the frustration, and this is what I've learned from you, Jace, the frustration is on the edge of the insight that you need to break through the bullshit that you need to get to the next step. I go, fantastic. Yeah. Whereas before I would have been scared and going, holy shit, what am I going to do with all of these emotions? Because people get angry and frustrated and hate each other's guts when they are put in a position to change.
100%. And so when we're looking at leadership is built on a fundamental principle, and the fundamental principle is change. And so there's two things that we battle. Comfort is what we're looking for, and growth is actually what we really need. And growth actually comes down to actually being prepared to do the uncomfortable things. And so when we go into an organization like yours, and you've been a leader for a long time, I remember, I don't know, it was probably about 3 or 4 months into the academy, you said to me, Jason, your leadership model is ridiculous. Do you mind if I use it? And I was like, this woman likes my leadership model. And she's been in the game since 1999. And I built this because I hang it off a really important system in development. And I was like, oh my God, this woman likes my model. And how have you been going, like changing how you approach as a leader through the support mechanisms that we've given you in a leadership capacity when you are the expert? And that must be really interesting. This is what I love about you, Cathryn, is that usually a person who's been doing leadership since 1999, there's no way they're going to listen to a person who hasn't been in your position doing the type of things that you've done. How did you decide to even look and listen and learn? What happened to you?
So I guess I've always been a person who's been a constant learner and always been open to new ideas and I've been a bit of a, insatiable thirst for new techniques and always sought those sorts of things out. And I've really been reflecting on this over the last few weeks as well about, what makes me different. And I think it's such a mix of things. And I think it's the awareness that I have and the willingness to even put my ego aside. I think I have, when I look at the other senior executives I've worked with over the years, I have such a higher level of humility that they don't have. They have the need to be right, the need to be liked, the need to be the smartest, the need to be heard. So they're constantly just projecting out all of this signaling without, receiving anything. So I think my awareness and my humility, definitely. I think I have always had more courage than a lot of leaders will have. And I was, I've been often told that I've got, it's a very crass way of putting it, but I won't put it that way, but I've got more courage than most people would ever dream of. So, they also call me the boss, and I use that in a good way. So not as in, dominating. I'm not a dominant leader. I'm an authoritative leader, but I'm not a dominant one. And I'm quite humble and I have a lot of humility in that. I think the other thing is I'm always working on my communication, always working on it, always, and trying to find a better way to say it, to express it. And I tailor that to the people and where they're at. So I remember one day there was an architect sitting outside of my office and he was watching me all day long, and I didn't realize he was watching me. And I would have a constant stream of people coming through from all levels of the organization, all different topics. I can't even imagine how many different topics there are in a day. And I would just immediately switch into who are they, and I'd be with them and I would talk their language and be able to, know them as a person, know where we were at technically with the project, and then guide them to moving forward. And I think that's probably a skill that I've only recently realized I have. Like, I do it naturally, but it's not without working on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think, I think the other thing that I have, which gets me into quite a bit of trouble in senior leadership circles, is my integrity.
Yeah.
And I do what I say, and I'm not completely perfect, but mostly I do what I say. In fact, most of the time, and that's sorely lacking in senior leadership. There's so much smoke, there's so much mirror, there's so much hiding, and I will often just say the truth as I see it, and that is so uncomfortable for people. I've been demoted, I've been, sacked, I've been, you name it. When I've said the truth, I have reaped the consequences of that, because the organization is based on so much bullshit that truth coming through often just doesn't even have a place to land. Yeah, and it's a truth not as in you're an asshole. It's just the truth of where we are and what we need right now,
That's right, and I think this is really, really important. I know from being a leader in the academy, I'm a real softie, so people quite often want to have a go at the truth, because what we're doing, listeners, is we're hiding away our shame. So
totally,
that's the only reason why people get angry. Is shame actually needs, when we have shame, we defend it. When you understand shame from an academy perspective, it's beautiful. It's your best self is behind shame. So if you don't look at your shame, you're never going to grow. Most people are shameful about what they are, what they do. So they have to defend it with anger and righteousness, justify, manipulate, and deny, and blame and project.
Absolutely.
It's normal, right?
Absolutely. And that is senior leadership in a nutshell. That is how it operates. Yeah. And I don't do that. So I stick out like a sore thumb.
Okay, so this is what's really, really important. And we've done this podcast twice now because for the internet didn't work. And one thing that I think for you, especially being a woman, I want to actually put a gender bias in here, is that women are here to teach and bring emotions into the workplace, not to have shoulder pads. The worst thing I saw, and I didn't really understand it, when I started in the workplace, all I saw were women with shoulder pads. I was like, what is going on here? This just doesn't look right. Why are they trying to look like men in the workplace? Because that was where they were going to get they're going to be standing beside a man, so they'd better have their shoulder pads on. Metaphorically stupid, because you're a woman. And really important to understand, like, the woman is here to bring the emotions through the workplace that is sorely missing. And I think, you tell me if I'm wrong, you were doing more masculine as opposed to emotional, because there was no teaching of emotional based leadership and vulnerable based leadership that we're here to do and change the way in which we approach leadership.
Absolutely. And I have, as luck would have it, I've landed myself in very male dominated industries. So initially in consulting and in IT, a lot of my career. And I was often the only chick in the boardroom. And, when I look at even the way I presented and dressed myself in my IBM days, it was a black suit and a white shirt. I mean, and pants. And I'm not saying that is, you can't be a woman and wear pants. And I'm not saying you have to be all the way on the other spectrum. I'm saying that I was very dominant in my masculine energy and my action and my orientation like that, and was completely trying to hide or cover up the kindness, the femininity, the team-based decision-making, the emotion, which is all an incredibly beautiful part of me. And I have had, I remember for 20 years, I would flip and flop and trying to find out where I sat with those two spheres of being. And if I was too masculine, I would be told you're too aggressive. Like if I was just assertive, I'm told I'm aggressive. And then if I'm kind to my team, I'm then penalised and counselled for being too kind. So I was constantly being, beaten between these two constraints. And it's only very recently that I, dropped the suits and I started wearing floral. And, I know that's a fairly superficial representation, but I was comfortable in my femininity and started to appreciate, and even more so since I've been sick, how those skills and that energy that I have is gold and so lacking in organizations. And it started with me doing it for myself. So I had to start nurturing myself and treating myself well and allowing myself to be really sad and crying if I needed to, not just holding that, very stiff upper lip. And, I had relatives when I had reported what my father had done with throwing me against a wall as a child, as a 15-year-old. I'd gone to my grandmother and I was really upset and saying I need help. And she had said, "Hush, child, don't make a fuss." So from that moment, I think I was not making a fuss my whole life.
And I think this is so important, because that's not allowed in leadership, to make a fuss. And
correct.
I think one of the most joyous moments that I saw you break through in the academy was actually in a group call, and you said this out loud to everybody. You melted down, you cried in front of everybody, and you said, "I'm not used to actually being supported like this." And you broke down simply because there was a space available for you as a leader to be what you needed to be. And I remember you were holding everything back, and then all of a sudden a watershed in front of everybody. And that's not normal. Like, I've had leaders watershed behind closed doors. That's usually what they do, because I've had leaders all over the place come and find me and go, "Jason, I'm melting down. What do I do?"
How do I do this? But they would never, and then they'd go out into the showroom and say, hey, here's this beautiful car, blah, 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 and I've got all this covered, and here I am, right? And I'd be like, but you just melted down in front of me. Who are these two people, right? And so that's what we've got to learn to be able to do. And it's not, the one thing about leadership is that if you're a leader, listeners, don't think you're going to pour oil on your staff or the people that you're looking after. I never do that. People have seen me cry in front of everybody in the academy. I've done it in front of everybody. And every person has said it's made you more real. It's made you more tangible. It's removed the pedestal.
Yeah.
It's made you actually become normalized. And I think this is an essential part of leadership that is missing, that we all have broken bones and we have to be willing to put our hand up. There's a guy who I know who's just put himself up as he's got ADHD and he's had mental health issues. He's amazing to put that up. You know what I'm like? I'm a change agent. So I would love to go and work with him and say, let's get rid of this and get rid of the label, keep the magic and get you moving. He's sitting in, what is he going to do? Is he going to take medication? What's he going to do? Because, the ADHD is being stigmatized instead of normalized as a part of the human condition. And if we want to change anything, we can.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I couldn't believe it, that day where I did break down and I sobbed for a lot of the morning. And I knew your advice was sit with the sadness. And I thought, you're crazy. This is madness. But I did, and I couldn't believe the amount of messages that came through to me privately afterwards. And I still get them as people see them on the portal and watch them. They go, it was so beautiful to see you like that. And now I'm learning to do that in the corporate setting as well. So one recent thing for me was I got the flu, and it wasn't COVID, but I was pretty unwell for 5 days. And in the organisation I work in, nobody takes the time off to rest, but I did. As soon as I was feeling unwell, I stopped work and I didn't go back to work for 5 days. And that's unheard of in this organisation. So when I got back, I was not afraid to tell people that I did get unwell and I needed to look after myself, and it was really frustrating for me, and I've had to learn how to rest. And so I just expressed that, and I modeled what it's like to respond to your body and how you can put yourself first. Not that I was putting them in front of a whiteboard, but I was modeling that for them. And now I'm starting to see people taking, starting to think about, how am I feeling? That's a big shift. Big.
Yeah. And I think this is the essential ingredient, because one of the things I've said to you is that because you sorted yourself out so fast, right? We're talking a 10-year disease to a 2-month return, right? That's a very short turnaround, isn't it? So I knew that you were going to get tested the moment you got back to work. And it was going to be, okay, let's see the limited test here. What is she going to do? Is she going to be the slave, or is she going to integrate all the work that we've done? And you did a little bit of slave. You realized you had to turn it, and you had to keep getting that help from us to make sure that you didn't do what you would normally do. Okay, with that project's over, I'm on the new project. So what do I do now that project is over? Because health is in my opinion, is a full-time project for the rest of our lives.
Totally agree. And so in the past, I wouldn't have lent into my health and self-care. So because of the knowledge and the experience that I've had with the academy work, is I was able to, go through and assess, okay, where am I falling down right now? Because I have a very structured health regime since I've been sick, and I literally sit down every Sunday and I plan out my week, and I know exactly where I am exercising, where I'm getting mentoring, where I'm walking, where I'm going to yoga, when I'm doing meditation, when I'm doing journaling, and how much water I'm drinking every day, what food I'm putting in my body. And it's extremely, extremely structured. And I have done that now for almost 12 months. And so for me to get sick, I was like, okay, where am I falling over? And so I was able then to go, right, more support needed. So then reached out and said, and got some support from you and others. The other thing I realized was I wasn't breathing enough during the day, and I wasn't also, really filling my body with air to give my body the ability to regenerate, and that helped too. And then I leaned even harder into self-care. So for me, I had to rest and also make sure that I didn't have this compulsion to do. I am an absolute slave, not only to the organizations, but to my own personal goals that I put in my future. I'm an idiot. And, I am absolutely relentless with myself about my ambitions, my goals. I've got a 20-year plan, I've got a 10-year plan, I've got a 5-year plan, I've got a monthly plan. And I had to put them all down and go, right, they'll be there when I get better. That's okay. But health comes first, and the health value has to come first, because without it, there's nothing.
Yeah, there's no 20-year plan that exists, right? So I think this is essential, listeners, to understand leadership in another way, leading your own life with your health, making sure that you create a really good balance, making sure that you know how to stop. Because I remember when I was in corporate, I realized that each time I went up into another level, they expected me to do more hours. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. There are amazing systems that people do in the entrepreneurial world to work less, like the 4-hour work week is only typically done by a person who has created a structure where everyone is working for him, though. He doesn't tell you that part. It's knowing how to build systems in place to create a very important thing called balance, especially as a leader who, as we know, leaders typically have limited time in their bucket because they're pushed and pulled all over the place. So you have to put yourself and put things in place to get yourself regulated. And I think the most important thing that leaders need to learn is the regulation of emotions.
Absolutely. And I think, to do that, you've got to be able to have boundaries with yourself on your overdoing, overworking, overwhelm pattern that you're running all the time. And, the balance for me is that I have chosen to work 4 days a week. I have Wednesday off, and that has required me to have firm boundaries with my client about what I do and how many hours I work. I work from 8:30 to 5. I take rests through the day. I make sure I eat lunch now. I never used to do that. But the other thing, in addition to the balance, is the stability that I create in my life because of my focus on my health and my ability to eat right, move right, breathe properly, hydrate well, keep the right relationships and support in my life, have self-care, massages, whatever it might be, to give me the underlying stability to even be able to have the balance and the energy to create the balance that I need.
So yeah, we've got to learn to be able to, create systems in our life so we can break the systems that are working as well. So I remember when I was a healer, I had to stop because it wasn't working for me anymore. So I was happy, I was earning good money, and I wasn't growing. So I had to change the system that I was in that was actually a healthy one. So why would you change something that's not broken? Because you're not growing. And I think what we can do is we can get stuck in a rut even with our health system. So we've got to change things up and make things different. So then our body acclimatizes and adapts to different settings and different things. And this is why, change in leadership is the same as changing health routines. We've got to know how to, our body needs to learn to adapt, our mind and our emotions need to learn to adapt to different stimulus. Because if, let's say, we get a metaphoric elephant running through the corridor, how do we deal with the elephant that's charging at us? Well, if we don't know how to dodge, and it's just going to run us over.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that I didn't realize until I joined the academy and experience the incredible support from you and everybody else is that you need to have the right team of people around you. So for me now, I've got this incredibly beautiful support system around me that, you know, is not just you and Anya, your beautiful wife, but it's also some of the other people in the academy who have specialization in different disciplines, whether it's skincare or naturopathy or primal move with Ante, and, you know, how to get back to basics with your body and food and nutrition and all of that kind of thing. Like, I wouldn't have built this health and continue to be able to build this health if I didn't have the right advice around me. Because if you're asking someone who hasn't done it or doesn't understand it in most of the medical profession, if they want to give you a tablet or cut it out, and I'm not saying there isn't a place for that, because clearly I've had surgery, but it's having the right people in your team that not only push you and grow you, but also can give you the expertise and the perspective that you may not be able to see in that moment to look for and find a way through.
Yeah, and I fully agree with that. I know people quite often come to me because I am the perspective that's completely off the charts. And I know the academy, in my opinion, it's just looking straight at us. I remember one lady saying to me, "This is so simple. How come no one can see it, Jason?" And I was just like, that's because people are looking for complexity instead of simplicity. And we've forgotten our roots to simplicity. And I know that that's what the academy returns us back to with the work that we do. And I remember I look at myself, and I have a program of not being too smart. I wasn't so good at school. So I always have a laugh about this and think, my academy is not smart. It's actually brilliant.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's wisdom on steroids.
It's definitely not smart though, is it?
Not at all. No.
And so anyone who wants to join our academy who is smart, you have to let go of being smart, because that makes you really dumb.
Totally. It blocks your connection. It blocks your connection. If you are completely in your intellect, you are stuffed, because you're not connected to the rest of you. And when I say the rest of you, I mean your body, your spirit, your whatever it might be, your intention. And I'm not saying either, and one of the lovely things I've learned from you too, Jace, is you can't get rid of your head either. You've got to use that too. So it's being able to know, what are you thinking? What am I feeling? Where am I stuck? What does that look like? Has it happened before? What do I, those sorts of awareness. And again, going back to leadership, the awareness is so key. Yeah. Then you're not going to find your way through, because you can't think your way out of stuff, and you can't think your way out of getting better. You need the mind to help you. Yeah. But the disease is in your emotions, in your feelings, in your body. So no amount of thinking through it will get that disease out of you.
I agree. And this is where we've sort of been taught at school to be mind-based. And in the regular coaching industry, this is why I created our academy. It's all built on mindset, which is one part of you that actually is the minimal part of you. It's the part that has to actually digest the rest and know how to make logical reference-based choices on that rest. But if you just had that mindset, is very limited in its capacity to understand the broader spectrum of life. So, everyone can feel this. You walk into a room that's full of anger, you can feel it. You walk in and go, what's wrong? But people have lost that ability to know what it is. I remember going to Canada one day, and I was going down to a band. This is when I used to smoke drugs and drink. And, I was going to see this amazing band. I opened the car doors with my partner at the time. I went, oh my God, we have to leave. And my partner would just be like, Jason's spidey senses. She just trusted me unequivocally. Yeah. We got in the car, we didn't say anything. And then my instinct says, go and get the paper. I got the paper, the Vancouver Sun, page 1, someone was shot in that street that night.
Yeah, right? Totally. And I built my career on my intellect completely. Like, I've got a business degree from a top school in the US. I've got a graduate degree in psychology, which is all mind-based. I've done life coaching training. I've spent my life as a consultant, dreaming up business models and all sorts of very complex academic kind of models. And, there's nothing wrong with my intelligence. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
And what I now know is that is only a part of this leadership. It is not the whole thing. And now I can bring my other qualities to bear and be okay with those qualities as well, with the awareness, with the courage, with the sadness, with whatever that might be, the humility. It's all okay. And in fact, it makes me more of who I am rather than less than, to express those parts of me.
100%. So I love you, like what you've learnt quite a bit in such a short period of time from what we've taught you, and you've had to relearn a whole bunch of things. What advice would you give someone around leadership now that you didn't know beforehand? So a whole bunch of understandings now. What would you say to someone who wanted to get into leadership now? What advice would you give them?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I have learned so much. I think for me, when I started valuing my health more, that started changing the game for me. So when I pulled that up to one of my highest values, and I knew that was the value I was going to live by. So that is probably one thing that you need to be able to do, and you need to have the courage to put your own needs first. So I think even acknowledging that you have needs, that you have values, that your emotions are okay, and where you are right now is all right, I think that would also help. And then the other thing, which I think we've talked quite a bit today about, is getting the right support, and getting the right support who can teach you to be able to not only be the intellectual side, but also the emotions, the values, the feelings, and I can't even express how that is. And it's not something you can intellectually describe. It's really an experience of being able to experience your own self and who you are, and be okay with that. And I remember when I first started, and I was lying on the table at Chris's clinic, and we were dealing with some pretty heavy duty grief that I was feeling, and it was in my body. And I said, I'm devastated. And I was sobbing, and there was snot everywhere, and I was crying. And he said to me, and that's okay. And I was like, what? It's okay to have these feelings? And I had never in my life had anyone say to me, and that's okay. So total acceptance of where I was, how I was feeling, it was okay.
Yeah.
And that is something that doesn't happen in leadership for the leader.
No, it doesn't for the leader. And I think, we have this thing called Mental Health Day. It's okay to not be okay, right?
Yeah.
But people don't actually know how to do that. So they put a day of it, but it's not educated. Yeah. And
it's not baking cupcakes. And then, it's not baking cupcakes. And for me with cancer, I worked as a volunteer at the Cancer Council and put little T-shirts on the teddy bears for Daffodil Day. That's not treating cancer.
No. And I think we need to be educated in a really different way now around leadership, health, and our core values to get this right. And I know from working with so many people have said this to me about our academy. It's so unique, and it's something that is needed. I had a lady who's a nurse, and she said, this needs to go into the whole nursing profession. Can you get it in there? Because she was just like, oh my God, how much she's grown, and she's not sitting in her system as a nurse. There's a couple of nurses who have said, can we get this in the nursing profession? Yeah. Like, well, there's only dumb Jason here, so I'm going to need some help to actually infiltrate into areas. And this is why I look to people like you, Cathryn, and say, well, if I can get people who've got the training to do that, then they can actually be that anomaly in the leadership space that you're in and actually train people and domino them, create the domino effect, because you are a better, you're in that experience. So when I get like a Sparky, for example, and they've got addiction issues, I go, right, let's get you off the addictions, get you moving, and then you can talk to all the Sparkies, because they're talking electrical talk, and I'm not an electrician, right? So it's so much easier for me to go, well, if I can influence the magic that's in the person, then they can lead the journey towards changing their particular wheelhouse of expertise.
Yeah, and I think that is a massive journey for me in itself, to accept that I am in that position. And I still battle with it today because of my humility. I think, I battle with that. I'm like, well, why would I make a difference? I go into my own doubt, and, even though I've done everything I've done, and I can list all of pages and pages of achievements, not only in my career, but also in the last 12 months health-wise, even with all of that laid out in front of me for my own eyes to see, I still am really humble about, even sharing all of that with people and standing in that without worrying about, the being liked or belonging or being heard. I am a human too, and I battle with all of that in those moments where I am standing in front of a group of people and I'm called to have the courage to be me in that moment, and to have the courage to show that emotion, to express how I'm feeling, to let them know it's okay. That's not easy for me to do either. And people think because of the way I am and the presence I hold, that it's really easy for me, because it might look easy, but it's not. No, it's just not.
I think this is really important, and humility is in the leadership model that we share, and it allows the leaders who actually have humanitarian approaches. That's humility is humanitarian in its nature. Yeah. So, and the reason why, if it's not held intact and understood properly, this is where we can lose our health, because we're too humble and we don't look after ourselves. So it's knowing how to prioritize that humility in a really healthy way. So if you look at all the movies, the humble one is given the actual lasso from Wonder Woman, right? The one, and it's all in every single story. Thor got the hammer, Loki wanted it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so the ones who are, and they're the ones that get castrated and told that it's not okay to be them. And they're just going, why are you picking me? Can you get that hammer away? Can you get that lasso away? Right. Because I'm not that one. And you guys do that to me. It's just like, Jason, you're the one I need. I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
Little Jason sits here and goes, but I'm little Jason. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing and a crushing thing. So we've got to know how to use humility in a really healthy way to make sure that people don't get stuck in mud, because our philosophy is we want good people to come first, and humility is the way. Crushing humility is the stopper, right? And you've never had it stop you, which is really cool. You're lucky in that regard. It's just how we use it. And when people say, oh my God, I just read someone's book. Her name's Kayla. I read her book last night, the whole thing, and I was all through the book, and I was just like, oh my God. And then I looked at all the impactful decisions that she had made thanks to my mentoring. And I said, that was amazing. I just wasn't expecting to be all through, riddled through her book. I was just like, oh shit. Because you don't realize the impact you make as a leader until someone actually points out the life choices that was made because someone interfered healthily in the journey, so someone wouldn't hit the ball.
Absolutely. And I still get shocked. Like, I get messages from people that were in my team 5, 6, 7 years ago who for whatever reason, just reach out and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that working with you was one of the most incredible moments, of my life. And I'm really grateful that you're in it. And I haven't spoken to them for 5-6 years, and they'll just send a little message randomly. And I think, wow, okay, because you don't realize, as you say, when you're in it and you're doing your thing and you're being who you are, the ripple effect of that. And you can't even imagine what that does for people. And I don't sit there thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to be doing this and they're going to then contact me and then I'll feel like I'm worthwhile. I don't think that way.
Yeah.
But equally, I'm needing to learn to appreciate that even me showing up is enough.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as a leader. Like when you realize this and humility is there and you've got it in check well, I know now that just people have said this to me for years. Jason, just listening to your voice makes me feel better. I'm like,
yeah.
So I've learned now that when I was a healer, when I was doing it at the end, I just put my hands on and didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I just needed to show up because they had pure belief in me that I would change their body structure. And I'd just show up and I'd sit there and go, and I'd watch their body heal themselves, and I would actually do nothing. And I was just like, so I don't even have to put any influence in here. I just need to be me and show up. And imagine if we could all do this. Imagine how this planet would be, all leading our individual lives. Because this is not just about leadership as a person like you, Cathryn. This is about all the little things that we do. It's the things that we do when no one's looking that really matters.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it's not just in the corporate sense that I have to show up as me. I have to show up as me as a sister, as a daughter. When I'm at the supermarket and there's something going on, it's just anywhere that I need to be me in all of those settings. And that's what I'm learning right now is it's, showing up is enough and you are enough. And it's really when I am in that total ability to be present, that is when the way comes forward, and my intuition gives me what I need to make the decision to act in a particular way. So I'm not running around like a busy idiot. I'm actually totally present to the action or the inaction that is right for me right now.
Yeah, and I think this is really essential to understand, listeners, is that when you really focus on being able to be in the moment and knowing what you need to do in that moment, you've been a great leader in your world. I in all honesty, don't take this the wrong way, Cathryn. I don't give an absolute shit about what people do in their life. Yeah, I want to know how they're leading their own life so they can be better people. So if you're the supermarket person and you're looking after people and you're putting stuff in their groceries, if you're leading with integrity in that world, well done. Yeah. I don't care what this thing called, I want to make this massive impact. Most people who do that, they're actually making a bombshell in their personal life and no one knows about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, to balance my table, as I call it. And I think your beautiful wife gave me that analogy that, you can't just have one leg on your table. It won't stay up. So I've got to make sure I've got all of the legs on my table, and it's not just 4, there's 5 or 6 of them. And I've got to make sure that I'm building all of those legs to make sure that my table stays up. And that includes me learning, and I'm still learning, how to be in a relationship with a man. Yeah. I haven't mastered that yet, but I'm working on it. And, how to be a daughter, how to be a mother. I have a lot of legs in my life that I need to work on. And I'm constantly, while I'm very good at the professional Cathryn, I need to make sure that all those other legs of the table are also standing well, and I am standing well in those moments as well.
Yeah, and I think this is really important, guys, is that you've got to be able to lead in all the facets where your weak points are. Because I know a lot of people, they join the academy and say, hey, I want you to help me get a business off the ground, or helping me get my clients, you know what the first thing that they do after they do that? They say, hey, I'm having troubles with something completely the opposite to what they've asked for. Because what they're really wanting is something else often. And we have to work with that something else first before we can actually give them the very thing that they've actually come with in the first place. You needed health first and foremost. So
I needed help.
yeah, so you had a really clear direction, and quite often we focus on something else, and we've got to learn to actually make sure that we build all those blocks together in a way that's not going to overwhelm us, and do it in a calculated way, in a systematic way, so we can get the life that we want, and to liberate our world in a way that we can actually look. And when we do die, I'm glad that you're not dead now. When we do die, we look at the tombstone. The tombstone that's written is, that person created balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what I didn't realize was how pervasive that health goal would be for me, and how many aspects of my life would be completely transformed because of that one goal to get rid of the tumor and be well, and how other relationships in my life would bloom, how others would fall away as well. There's a lot of grief in the growth process as parts of you die and people slip away. I had no idea that I would start to have better relationships with my family, that I would start to learn how to have better relationships with men, that I would ask for more for what I'm worth in the workplace. Like, there was so many benefits from just that initial health goal. And as I think you say, the flowers start to bloom everywhere else. And it's so true. Because I didn't come to the academy to look at relationships or family or, romance or any of those things. But having the health goal, then it laid that foundation for all of those other flowers to start blooming.
Yeah. And listeners, I think this is really important. What Cathryn is saying is, wherever you're weak, one thing I know, and you know this now, is our academy can help every single facet of your life. No matter whether we know your experience or not, we can change your life. The only thing you've got to be willing to be able to do is let go of your ego and think you know everything, because you don't.
Absolutely. And there's no way that I would have imagined that in the year that I was battling a very serious health issue, that I would write a book, that I would get certification in mentor, that I now have people contacting me saying, I want to get a mentor session, and that I would be dating, and that, after a full hysterectomy, I mean, that seemed mad at the time. And having incredible relationships with my family as well, like I wouldn't have even imagined.
Yeah, it's really unfathomable when you get an experience like this, isn't it? It's like, and and it's tangible. You've seen it, it's happening, and then the most important thing that you did touch on quite a while ago when we're talking is this intangible quality of being who you are, and no one can actually, you can't gauge that. Right? It's a gauge within your inner sanctuary that actually I can tell when someone's different, but most people don't even take notice of that intangible quality that we're all looking for. And no matter how big your house is, no matter what car you drive, no matter what job you have, no matter what things you do, if you do not have that sense of intangible calmness and fulfillment and breath in your inner world, and you know what I mean by saying this, don't you now? You are never, ever, none of those things that you've acquired will ever make you happy, ever.
Absolutely. And, I have a pretty well-paying job. I have a great career. I have a lovely home. I have a beautiful car. I've got great friends and all of that. And it's only in those moments, and I actually had one this morning, which I wasn't expecting, where I was sitting there doing my daily journal, which I do every day, and I check in with how I'm feeling, thinking, what's stopping me, what am I grateful for, all sorts of things. And I just was sitting there and I was overcome with a wash of tears as I acknowledged that I'm okay, and I had this pride in the growth that I've achieved. And I'm not saying I'm there yet, and it's a continual thing. However, I had a moment where I was like, well done, Cathryn. Well done. And it was totally from my insides and my feelings of contentment, satisfaction, belonging. I can't even describe the mix of feelings which were flooding out of me in tears, sobbing, because of the release of being who I am and being okay with who I am.
Yeah, and I think this is really important, listeners, is to listen to this woman and understand where she was. We started with a person who was potentially going to die because of her choices, and now is celebrating her life because of her choices. Right? Same thing. True. Choices that she didn't know she was making to aware-based choices. Now that she knows she's in the control seat of her life, by having a catastrophe, requiring the help, listening, and now being able to make the most important thing as a leader of your own life, conscious choice.
Totally, completely agree. And if you know you are not working on your awareness and your awareness of yourself and the ability for you to make choices consciously, then you will be stuck, and your results will be absent, and your ability to move will be completely gone, because you are in the mud, and you are sitting there with your eyes shut and your mouth closed. And so when I began to listen to myself, to actually acknowledge myself, to honor my thoughts and all of that, I didn't actually reach that ability to have that intuition kick in for me.
And I think this is really important, guys. Look, Cathryn, I really want to thank you for jumping on Uncovered today. And I hope, listeners, that you feel inspired by Cathryn's story of achievement, of what she's learned probably in 12 months is more than what she's learned in her lifetime, being here on the planet, and how to live it in a conscious way, in a different way. And I think it's really important for you, wherever you're at right now, look at Cathryn. You could be another Cathryn if you want. The thing is, the thing that I admire about this woman, skin in the game, right? She put her skin fully in the game and said, I'm game on. And so for someone like me, I go, if someone's got game on with me, I take them to the exponential trail of growth. I take them fast. And you had to be on a freight train of change. And I'm not saying get cancer and come and see us. If you're in good shape,
no,
you don't have to do it Cathryn's way, right?
That's not the message here. And I'm hoping that even if one person listens to this, they realize that they don't have to be completely broken and sick to do something to improve your life. It would be easier to do it before you get to the point that I did and had 10 months out of work, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on getting better and all of the rest of it. I'm hoping that people don't do it the way I did it. However, if they do, they know that there is a way through if they choose to.
100%. So choose prevention rather than having to do the cure. Is that correct?
I would recommend that, and I never ever understood what that meant before. I thought it was the biggest load of trollop. But yeah, I guess through the experience, I can appreciate that saying far more than I did before.
100%. So thank you, Cathryn, for jumping on with us, and hopefully, listeners, you've got some really good inspiration around this. You're an inspirational woman, and I'm really looking forward to actually hearing your journey over your time of impacting the lives of thousands of people in a very, very different way now.
Thanks, Jace, for having me. It's definitely one day at a time. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and Also, our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't buy it, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.